He lived to be almost 89, and he sounded great almost till the very end of his life. And, all those beautiful double stop, contrary motion, inner voice movement, some open string voice things. Yeah, great vocabulary. Some footage of him, I think I told you about, maybe you've seen it already, with him at 85 playing in a restaurant. It's just amazing, just playing the arrangements. It's incredible. Yeah, he was wonderful, and a humble, sweet gentleman. Really nice man.
All right, we are live on YouTube now. I forgot we didn't check our levels yet. We should maybe do that really quick.
Yes, we should. You want to check yours?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Good compared to equal with my talking.
Yes, and mine hopefully is okay too. Seem okay, huh? Roughly.
Sounds good to me. All right, let me just put the PayPal link in the description, and we'll be good to go.
Super. I appreciate you setting this up for us, Mike.
Oh, I always love doing them. My pleasure.
Yeah, they're fun. Hey, thanks also for checking with the Litchfield folks. Maybe they consider having us in the future. Sounds like they're sort of booked up for a while, but
yeah, hopefully maybe we could do something in person in the coming months.
I would love that. I'm going to try to get
a good direction.
Yeah, I think they are. I'm going to get. I think I'm eligible to be vaccinated now out here, so I'm going to think I can get one done hopefully this month. So I want to try to get back to see my sister a couple of times, like I normally do in the Northeast. Later in the year, I'll sure keep you posted. And if everybody's vaccinated, hopefully we can do some more of cautious indoor gatherings. That would be great.
Yeah, my parents got their first one the other day, and a lot of my friends' parents are starting to. So it seems like it's going in a good direction.
Right. How did your parents do after the shots? Any reactions, or were they okay?
No, they said that apparently the second one is the one that you have to watch out for, but they felt completely normal after the first one.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Super. In terms of tunes we do together, Gone with the Wind could be one. How about some other ones you like? We haven't talked so much about repertoire. How about a bossa nova?
Yeah.
And any Latin tunes you like? I don't remember what we did last time.
Corcovado last time.
Sure. Any other Jobim ones that you like?
I can get through.
Yeah, that one's it's a nice one. It's kind of a long form. Let's pick a shorter one.
Oh,
could be something like, Insensitates. I like. Let's do that.
Cool.
So those let's start with those two, and then if we decide we want to play more, we will. In terms of starting the concert, would you like to start, or I can? Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Why don't you start it out?
Okay, I will.
Cool. We are live right now.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Those of you who are watching, we're very glad you could join us. I'm here with my friend Mike Godette. Mike is in Seymour, Connecticut, and I'm John Stowell, and I'm in Portland, Oregon. And Mike and I have been friends now for almost a year. We met initially when Mike was kind enough to use one of my phrases for his lick of the week. And you should definitely check out his YouTube series. Among other things, he posts a weekly excerpt of a lick that he breaks down and analyzes for you. It's very helpful and great. All sorts of different instruments and styles. And I was just impressed with Mike's playing and teaching, so I reached out to him, and we've been friends ever since. Now we've done a number of classes together for the Mike's Masterclasses site, and we've done. I think this is Mike. This is our second one of these YouTube lives? Yes, I think so.
This is actually our third.
Okay. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
So until we can play together in person, which we will do, I hope maybe later this year, what we did with the other formats, which we will also do for you today, is just each to play some solo tunes. Maybe we'll react a little bit to each other, and I'm sure I'll have some nice things to say when I hear Mike play. And then at the end, we thought we might trade some courses on some tunes for you. So I think I'll start, and then I'll defer to Mike. And what'll I do for you? Let's see. I'm going to do a Billy Strayhorn tune that I like, and this is a little arrangement. I've got this up on my YouTube channel. Billy was an incredible composer, collaborated for 30 years with Duke Ellington. I'm sure many or all of you know him and love him. And this one is part of the Far East Suite, and the tune is Isfahan. It was a ballad feature for Johnny Hodges. That's an important trade route city in Iran that's been a UNESCO heritage site now for quite a while. I've heard it's a beautiful city. And this arrangement comes from bassist Steve Gilmore. And Billy was fond of composing in the key of D flat, and that was the key he used for Isfahan. And what Steve Gilmore did is take the first 16 bars of this 32-bar tune and play it down a half step in C. So if anyone is interested in this arrangement, I have a chart I could send to you. I think I sent it to Mike, but if anyone's interested in hearing from us after you see us today, stay in touch with us and we'll send you some of our materials. So Isfahan from Billy Strayhorn in the keys of C and D flat, courtesy of Steve Gilmore. So there's a little
Beautiful.
Billy Strayhorn, courtesy of Steve Gilmore. Thanks, Mike. I look forward to hearing what you're going to play. Tell me what you'd like to play for us.
I think I'm just going to start out with How Deep is the Ocean, like a mid-tempo.
Perfect. Perfect. Very nice, Mike.
Thank you.
I'm just happy that folks of your generation are still enjoying playing the standards and finding some interesting material to work through. I think because those songs really will last forever in terms of great vehicles for jazz players. And you've obviously been playing these tunes for many years now too, but I still find fresh challenges and fresh things to do on these great old classic tunes, and you do too, obviously, which I'm happy to see.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you do that ending? What is the turnaround? How do people normally do a turnaround at the end?
Oh, I've seen, that's a tune that has a number of variations on it. I think maybe you and I have shared some of the Bill Evans changes on that. I think Bill does kind of what you do up to the, major back to the relative minor and then cycling around back to the major. I think that's mostly what folks do. Mm-hmm. So that's typically what I'll do too. Some folks might end up a half step above, you end up maybe as an E major and then cycle your way back down to the C minor somehow. Bill has, Bill's take on standards is interesting. I think I've played my version of Everything I Love for you. We've maybe shared it about, Bill's, and I have Bill's take on How Deep Is the Ocean also. It's a bit different. He's got a number of chromatic 2/5s on the first ending. So he goes on this part, he plays C sharp minor to C half diminished to F to B flat 7 to E flat 7 to D7 to G. So it's, it's a lot of information, but it's pretty logical. It's mostly fourths or half steps. Mm-hmm. And that's Bill's take on a lot of different tunes of his own, as well as maybe I'll play one of Bill's tunes. I think I played one of these maybe the last time we played, but it's been a while. So I really like Bill's composing and writing. Maybe I'll put those two little tunes of Bill's that I had memorized together into a little medley for you. And if you look at Bill's writing and his take on standards, it's busy. There's a lot of harmonic activity, but it's very logical. It's mostly related to diatonic things. I look at Bill Evans' changes and you can see the logic, when he thinks about how to move through the harmony.
Right. What about that very ending after the?
Right.
Like, do you do the whole thing, or do you just do?
You're talking about as a turnaround at the end of the tune, or?
Yeah, at the very end.
Yeah, I mean, a cycle, passing through that little turnaround 3 times is a good default ending. Sometimes I might just hang out on an E at the very end and just stay there and not resolve it anywhere. Sometimes it's fun to end on an unexpected tonic, Mm-hmm. So just end on a. Yeah. And maybe just go down in whole steps, something different other than sort of the usual. Sometimes modulate to another key altogether. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people will modulate up to a 3 major the way you might modulate to that tonality on a bridge. Interesting. And I might maybe go, something just unexpected, mm-hmm. Just not the usual. And it can be anything, basically. Mm-hmm. Nice. So let me do this little Bill Evans medley for you. I really like these tunes. Before we went live, you and I both talked about Sid Jacobs and the fact that he's a great kind of exponent of Jimmy Weibel's etudes and Jimmy's approach to harmony, because Sid studied with Jimmy probably in the 1980s, and Sid's a great player in his own right, but really understands Jimmy's vocabulary well in terms of double stops, intervoice movement, counterpoint, and so forth. And one of Sid's books, I think he's got a number of books for Hal Leonard. One of his books is called the Bill Evans Guitar Book, in which
I have Sid, it right over here.
There we go. You know about it well too. So Sid managed, I think it took him about a year to do it, but he managed to get quite a bit of Bill's harmonic information from the piano translated onto the guitar. And some of the tunes really were composed, they sound like they were composed for a guitarist because Bill liked the sharp keys. He liked to compose in A or F sharp. So My Bells is all these F sharp 7 chords with open E and B strings on top. That's one I want to look at. I haven't learned it. But I've got my arrangement of a tune that Sid has in his book with Bill's actual voicings. In my case, it's my voicings, but Bill's harmony. I think you've heard me play it before, Remembering the Rain. And the opening cadence is just 1 to 5 minor. It's a beautiful little ballad that I love, and it has a lyric as well. If you see it in the Bill Evans book, Bill collaborated with some lyricists. So I'll do that, and then I'll do a quick segue into another tune that Bill wrote around the same time in the mid 1960s called "Funny Man." So, Remembering the Rain and "Funny Man" from Bill Evans, mid 1960s. Nice melodies
So
from Bill, huh?
beautiful.
They're
That was
great tunes.
amazing.
Those are the only two tunes of his that I have memorized, but he wrote, 40, 50 tunes. And I think there's probably a wealth of information in Sid's book in terms of Bill's actual voicings and some beautiful compositions, I think. Those are the only two because I know at this point from memory, but I would like to learn some more.
That was Time Remembered, and what was the other one?
No, the first one was Remembering the Rain.
Oh,
Time
Remembering the
Remembered
Rain.
is one of his more popular ones. Yeah, Time Remembered is a great one. I recorded that one with Dave Liebman. They played piano, actually.
Oh, nice.
Time Remembered is a great, probably the ones that are played most often from Bill or Waltz for Debbie. Time Remembered, maybe Funkilero, a few, but he wrote a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
music. And so the two I just played for you are Remembering the Rain, and that last one was Funny Man.
Nice. Funkilero is interesting because it's the only song I've ever seen where it's got an altered dominant chord with the major seven.
I know. Yeah.
Never seen that chord
Yeah, I
anywhere
know.
else. It sounds so cool though.
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah, I thought it was a typo the first time I saw it, and then I realized, no, that's what he meant to play there. Yeah, I like that too. Actually, there's one other
It kind of has like that. It kind of has just like that blue note kind of sound.
I know it.
But it makes it
Yeah,
so
actually,
amazing.
I can think of one other tune actually that has the major seven in the melody too over dominant chord, which is Jimmy Rolls the Peacocks. That bridge, it sounds like kind of like a minor blues in the beginning, and the bridge has three modulations with dominant chords, and it's the major. He plays the major seven on all three dominant chords in the melody. Yeah, check out the Peacocks. It's quite interesting. And he did a record among others. He came up in the late 40s, early 50s. Great piano player. And his daughter is Stacy Rolls, really good trumpet flugelhorn player based in LA. I think Jimmy might have been originally in New York, but he spent most of the latter part of his life in LA. But he did, among other things, a really nice duo record with the British singer Norma Winston, and she wrote a lyric to the Peacocks and sang it with him. And it's a really tough melody on the bridge because it's got all this chromatic do do dee da do da da do bo da do 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 da da, all these really funny, difficult. I'm sort of approximating it there, but not really. But you think, boy, what is that note? And it happens three times on three different dominant chords. Then you realize he's playing the major seventh, just like Funkilero, over the dominant. So, if it's sort of in the context of the rest of the melody that makes sense, in the case of Funkilero, as you're saying, it just kind of makes it sound like a blues scale with that, with that note over it. If you're thinking of that based over the C minor tonality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you feel like playing? Indeed.
We have a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe we'll get to those. And
great.
Then
if anyone wants to comment or if anyone wants to comment or send us a question, please do.
Yeah, we got 13 people watching. Your friend Hal Merrill is watching. Hi, Hal.
Excellent, Hal. Hal is a great
is a student of mine. Hi, Matt.
Excellent.
Let's see. So we got one question. How do you each go about arranging a solo performance? I'd love to hear how you plan or practice the solo improvised sections. You want to take that first?
Well, since I've been playing and chattering on for a while, why don't you take it first?
Okay. Really depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing a standard that I haven't played in a while, usually I'll just run through it, make sure that I'm really aware of the melody throughout the neck. I have a good connection with the melody of the tune. And that's kind of, for me, a good framework to go off of. And then basically just try to comp around the tune, figure out ways to comp for myself, and then also solo around it. And depending on the tune, if it's like something I started with, like How Deep is the Ocean, trying to just always keep a nice strong tempo. But if I'm doing more of a ballad and I want to play more loose, then it might be different. But really all depends. I would say in general, that's probably how I typically go about doing it.
That sounds like a pretty good roadmap. Another couple of things I'd suggest is that you can have different versions of a chord melody arrangement of the tune. This question is more about the improvising, but I'd also just like to address the melody portion of the tune. Very often I will play, and I did this on all three of those melodies that I just played for you, Isfahan, Remembering the Rain, and Funny Man. I would do a less complex version of that chord melody if I were playing it with a group in time. So if I'm playing a rubato, that allows me maybe to play maybe a bass line below the melody, or just touch on some chord tones below, a little counter melody maybe. So you can have different versions of the melody based on whether or not you're playing a rubato with more harmonic detail or a simpler version. If I were playing Funny Man with a group, it might be. So quite like, I don't have time to play all the other harmonic details that I do like. So, and another thing I've experimented a little bit with, which I was doing it on, I think on all three of those tunes. Of course, you want to be able to play in time well on your own, but I also sometimes like experimenting with a pulse without a fixed meter. So for example, Funny Man, if I were playing it in a conventional way in time, it would sound like, and so forth. But if I could play it just as a fixed pulse, rather a pulse without a fixed meter, it might sound like. So you're hearing a quarter note, but it's not 4/4.
Right.
That's something that's harder to do with the group, obviously. Use the melody of the tune, obviously, as a kind of a context for your solo. You and I both do that. So referencing some of the melody, I'm very often singing the melody to myself when the tune's going by, in case I want to grab a little piece of the melody to create a context for my solo. And the other thing that you and I both do, Mike, is use the chord shapes, in some cases the chords that we're using in the arrangement of the chord melody, as little templates for our single lines when we solo.
Absolutely.
I would also suggest that guitar players who, as you begin to get some fluency with a repertoire of chord melodies, and maybe initially you're learning chord melodies from somebody else to develop some techniques as to how to create, and then eventually you're creating your own. In the process of doing that, and I think we can both demonstrate this as we play, we have been doing it already, you develop this ability to fluently kind of move back and forth between chords and single lines in the arrangements. That's part of the arrangement of the tune. You're almost never playing a chord for every note of a melody unless it's a ballad or you're trying to do some block chording the way Wes might do. So that skill then also comes in very handy when you're improvising. You and I can both move back and forth pretty fluently between chords and single lines when we solo, playing alone. Mm-hmm. And even in a setting with, say, bass or bass and drums, to have that ability to mix chords and lines together, not only in the arrangement of the chord melody, but also when you solo, is very useful. Mm-hmm. You know, I think guitar players tend to think more in terms of lines and then chords, but really they're part of the same kind of overall approach to soloing. If you're the only chordal instrument, I think they shouldn't necessarily be separated out.
Yeah, completely agree.
I mean, I hear you do that all the time too when you're playing alone. So I don't think I'm assuming you have some clips up on YouTube of you playing in a group. I have not heard you in that setting yet. I think I'd like to check you out.
Yeah, I have a couple. I uploaded one a few weeks ago. It was from before COVID, and it was funny seeing it without, playing without a mask on with other people.
Yeah,
like,
one,
wow, different
yeah,
world.
just yeah. If you watch a film now of New York City 2 years ago, it's just the sidewalks jammed with people. I think, boy, it really is a different world now. Yeah. So I hope that answers whoever asked that question. I hope that answered your question a little bit. Yeah, do weigh in with any comments or questions, anyone who's watching, and we're sure happy you're all here. Mm-hmm. Your turn to play something.
Cool. And just real quick, thank you everybody for watching. If you would like
to,
nobody is obligated to, but we have a PayPal link in the description if you'd like to donate. It's always greatly appreciated, but not required. And I am going to continue. I'm going to do an original song I wrote maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It's a song I wrote when I was listening to a lot of Scofield and Jim Hall. So it's basically just a tune that, shows my Scofield and Jim Hall influences. And this one is called Standardized.
Very nice, Mike. I hear a little Sco
Thank
and
you.
Jim Hall in there, but you're not copying either one of them. But I hear the influences. That was nice.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Lots of nice melodic minor references in there, among other things.
I love melodic minor. That's why it was great when I first met you. And one of the first videos we did was melodic minor applied to dominant
We
chords.
did.
I was like, we're on the same page.
We are indeed. We have a lot of shared vocabulary in that area and a lot of the same ways of thinking too, I think. So I'm going to do another. I think I'll do another Billy Strayhorn for you. Here's one that he wrote. I'm not sure when he wrote it, but it's in a number of the fake books called Lotus Blossom. And some friends have told me they've seen this written as a waltz. Other people say they've seen it written in 4/4. And I've been playing it as a Latin 5. Which I got an idea from Paul Myers, who you probably know, a great East Coast guitarist who's not too far away from you. We used to do Prelude to a Kiss as a Latin 5. So maybe I'll start with a melody rubato and then jump into a bit of Latin 5 in the middle. I've got this up on my channel too. So here's Lotus Blossom from Billy Strayhorn.
Beautiful.
Pretty melody from Billy, huh?
That's awesome.
Thanks, Mike. It's not a hard tune, actually. It's got a bunch of chromatic 2/5s. It's all kind of centered around B flat major and a little bit of she basically resolving to the 2 chord on the bridge and then 1 tonic diminished. But it's all essentially based pretty much around the B flat major scale with that little chromatic 2/5 and some cycles. But a beautiful melody, I think.
There's so many amazing Billy Strayhorn tunes.
I know. I'm up to 4. I want to learn another 10 at least. Rain Check is fun. I've got that on my YouTube channel. He wrote that around 1940. One of some others I like of his. Upper Manhattan Medical Group, Blood Count. I used to play. I haven't played that one in a while. What are some others?
He wrote
Quite
Take
a
the
few.
A Train, right?
He did. I think, this is, I'm not sure if it's the day he arrived in New York, but he was trying to find Duke Ellington. He'd met Duke at an audition in Pittsburgh, and Duke said, come to New York. So he just showed up. He hadn't heard from Duke, and he said to somebody, how do I get up to Sugar Hill in Harlem? You take the A train. Right. And whether or not he wrote it on that first trip up is debatable, but he definitely wrote it.
Yeah.
Pretty prolific. He only lived to be 51 years old, but what an incredible, prolific, beautiful career. And only one record as a leader. Only one record as a leader. He and Duke were in Paris to do a soundtrack for Paris Blues, film with Paul Newman. I think Sidney Poitier might have been in it too. And he went into the studio in Paris with a French rhythm section and some singers. That's his only record as a leader. It's quite nice. I'm trying to remember the name of the record, but that's his only record in 30 years as a leader.
Wow, I never even heard of that. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I'm trying to remember. I think it's only Texier on bass, and I think a French drummer and some singers. And Billy was quite a good piano player. There's some sound checks, there's some air checks of him playing piano with the Duke band, and him kind of fiddling around on the piano. You can hear some, some probably if you type in his name on YouTube, some things will come up with him playing the piano. And he was quite accomplished. Not only as a composer, but he could really improvise and really play the piano. Sounded a little like Herbie Nichols mixed with Monk with a little bit of Billy's sophistication kind of thrown in. So angular and in a really good way.
That's awesome.
I think there's an outtake of him singing Lush Life and playing it. So that was part of his audition for Duke Ellington. I think I told you that.
Oh, really?
He was 21, 22 years old. Maybe I didn't tell you the story. Maybe some of the folks who are listening haven't heard it. It's a fun story. So Billy had a reputation when he was quite young in Pittsburgh, where he was from as a piano player, arranger, composer, but he wasn't known outside the area. He was still young. And a friend of his had an uncle who brought Duke to Pittsburgh for some concerts. There was always an upright piano in Duke's dressing room. Just he wanted that in his contract because sometimes he liked to compose back there when he's waiting around. So they arranged an audition after a concert, and Duke was a bit tired. So here comes Billy. Hello, Mr. Ellington. My name's Billy Strayhorn. Here's the way you play Sophisticated Lady tonight. I've made some changes. Here's my version. And it was good enough that Duke looked around and said, hey, tell some of the guys in the band to come down here and listen to this kid. So the audition went on for quite a while. And at some point, Billy said, and here's something I wrote called Lush Life. He'd already written it. And Duke, needless to say, was very impressed and said, come to New York and I'll find something for you to do. You can start by helping me with some arrangements or doing something. I'll find something for you. So Billy shows up, I don't know how long later, but he just shows up in New York, knocks on Duke's door. Hi, Mr. Ellington. Oh, yeah, come on in, kid. Probably something like that, I think. And that was the next 30 years of his life.
Wow. That's incredible.
Interesting, huh? Yeah, and I'd like to know a little more about Billy. I have read his biography. It's pretty interesting. But he was shy, unassuming guy, very bright. So Duke's being in Duke's band, although he didn't maybe get the recognition he felt he deserved, it just gave him a chance to really practice his craft, probably make a pretty good living and be in this kind of large family of guys who all appreciated him. And so probably not such a bad way to go, I have a feeling.
Yeah, well, now I got to listen to more of them.
Yeah, me too. Like I said, I only played just a few of his tunes, but I think there are quite a few little gems in there that we just don't know. Daydream is another nice one I played recently. That's a nice one.
Chelsea Bridge,
quite a few.
Hal reminded
Chelsea,
me.
yeah.
Chelsea Bridge,
oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hal's actually been doing some really interesting things on the pedal steel, including a couple of my tunes, but I think Hal probably plays some Billy. And Hal's been doing some classical things lately too on pedal steel. So check out his YouTube channel. He's a friend in Tacoma, Washington, not too far from here. So he and I have done some workshops and sessions together. Nice man.
Yeah, I love the voicing he's able to get. The voicing sound wild on it.
Yeah, they do. And it's, there's some limitations and problems, but also some incredible advantages to that instrument, but very difficult to play well, especially in the things that he's attempting. So keep doing what you're doing, Hal.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a couple more questions in the chat.
Okay,
so
great.
One person wanted to know, how do you play together with keys and guitar? So I would say in terms of that, usually if you're playing with a piano player that knows what he's doing, there's going to be a level of communication where you kind of sometimes we'll alternate. Maybe one person comps for one solo and then you alternate to another one. There are ways
Yes.
to play at the same time as well. So if the piano player is playing a lot more busy, then I might just want to keep like maybe some like just little like maybe rhythmic ideas or just something where I can keep this figure going and not really get in the way. But I'm definitely not going to like comp freely while a piano player is at the same time. Or maybe some, just little like single note, maybe octave lines, like almost like a shout chorus kind of thing. But all really depends on the musical setting and who you're playing with and what sort of effect you're trying to get across. But typically that's how I would for the most part, go about doing that.
I would agree. I mean, there's some groups like George Shearing's group in the 50s that had vibes, piano and guitar, where there could be arrangements written out for specific voicing. So that's more ambitious. In a jam session setting, you're right on the money. There's something that happens rarely, but can happen. I've done a number of duos with piano players. Occasionally, a piano player will put his left hand away while he's soloing, or her left hand away, which is an invitation for you to comp more actively. They're giving you permission to comp more actively because they're putting their left hand away. But you're right, Mike, in the sense that most of the time piano players will accompany themselves. So sometimes we just play nothing or very little, simple chords, typically voiced lower, or as you're saying, a shout chorus or a simple rhythmic figure. Sometimes I might even play long tones like half notes or whole notes. So a very simple counterline to what the soloist is doing. I mean, if the soloist is busy, I mean, even just something as simple as maybe you just play that over C minor because the soloist is playing lots of interesting voicings of C minor with his left hand and pretty active. So maybe just alluding to the chord with a couple of half notes or whole notes can be fine, or just a long tone. Let something ring as a whole note. So space is the key. Two records I'd highly recommend if you want to hear how guitar and piano can interact well are the duet records with Bill Evans and Jim Hall. I think Undercurrent is the better record, but Intermodulation is great too. And that's what they do actually on My Funny Valentine on intermodulation, Bill, for his opening part of his solo. I don't think this was planned because they were just using this tune as a sound check tune. Bill just puts his left hand away and Jim's comping these beautiful Freddie Green style, actually quarter notes during Bill's opening course of the solo. So it's not the usual texture hearing piano solo with the right hand and guitar accompaniment, but it can work. And piano players have occasionally kind of done that for me too, because they know I like to comp. But typically, you're right. You want to err on the side of caution, leave plenty of space for the piano player because typically they are accompanying themselves. Space is critical.
Awareness, like awareness of who is comping is very important too, as a guitar player or a piano player, because there have, for me, definitely like been times where I'll be at a jam session or I'll be in a large environment where there's a lot of people playing and you're playing with the guitar and piano, and the piano player will just comp for the entire time and not even like look up or stop or anything. And to me, that definitely makes things a little bit more complicated. I think having an awareness of, okay, there's multiple comping instruments on the stage right now. How are we going to make this work together? I think if everybody kind of goes in with that attitude about it, it makes for a much easier experience for everybody, because you don't want to have to try to feel like, okay, this guy's comping the whole time, so what do I do? Am I going to try to have to figure out little things to fit in here and there? I mean, being able to have the freedom of alternating back and forth is definitely a really nice thing to be able to do in a setting like that.
I agree. Some of that just has to do with experience. Maybe if someone's a younger player and they feel they just want to keep their place in the tune, so they feel like they really need to comp the whole time. So it's not necessarily a lack of courtesy. It's just a matter of being a little insecure, maybe with the form and feeling like you need to comp. But a more experienced player, I would agree. And even in a working band, to have guitar versus piano accompanying really changes the sound of the group, because the guitar with its smaller dynamic range gives it kind of a more airy, open sound than piano does. And neither one is better than the other, but they are different. So to alternate in, I think most experienced piano players, if they know that you like to comp, they will defer to you and let you do some comping to it a session. If you've got 10 horn players lined up on rhythm changes, everyone's taking 10 choruses, then it is nice to have a little variety with the comping. I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. Good question though. So again, err on the side of caution in terms of leaving enough space. Too much space is better than too busy in my mind, for sure.
I agree.
And one more question. Another question.
This is an interesting one. It says, have you ever had experience playing in perfect fourth tuning? Do you recommend it? Scales and arpeggios seem really attractive to beginners. So I never have, but I do know that Stanley Jordan actually tunes his guitar like that. He's the only person I know that does do that. Have you ever done anything like that, John?
I haven't. I mean, the only things I've done with tunings that are not alternate, I've just changed the pitch. So I've got one guitar tuned, my fretless is tuned to major third lower, and then I've got two fretted baritones tuned to fourth lower. So I'm not changing the fingerings, and the sound is slightly different just with a lower pitch. But no, and actually Kurt Rosenwinkel, I think in the 90s, just felt he was kind of stuck for whatever reason. And he just created this completely bizarre random tuning and used it for a couple of years, including a
Right.
recording. And he sounds great with it. And then he
Was
said
that the
instead of
next
freed him
step?
up, and yeah, I think on the next step, and it's some really wacky tuning, not dadgad, something really unusual. He might have even just picked random pitches. I've forgotten what it was, but nothing with any kind of obvious relationship with the intervals. And he just created a vocabulary to be able to play with this unusual tuning. You can tell that it's different. You can't quite tell what the tuning is, but you can hear that it's
Right.
different. And so, if you want to experiment and try something, whether or not you end up ultimately using it, any way that you can kind of expand your perceptions. I do it with multiple instruments that are either tuned lower or fretless or nylon versus steel. You have multiple instruments too. So, any way you can expand your horizons or find something that works for you that might be unorthodox, and that Stanley Jordan sees that tuning for years. And I think he says it really works for him. So I guess I would say I have not done it, but don't be afraid to try things to kind of expand your mindset and get into maybe another way of thinking about going through the harmony.
The story of why Stanley Jordan started tuning his guitar like that is really amusing too, because he
Mm-hmm.
got his guitar and he was going through how to tune it, and they were telling him the fifth fret trick, and he did it for the
Mm-hmm.
first couple, and then he just thought like, oh, okay, you just do it for all the strings, and then he just stopped
So it's
reading it
just
and
a
he just
random
tuned the rest with
accident.
the fifth fret. Yeah.
Oh, funny. That's funny. And that's how he arrived at that tuning.
Yeah, and it
How
works for him
funny.
clearly.
Hey, if it works, yeah, it's clearly it works for him. So that's great. And he's still going strong. I just saw a recent a bit of a podcast he did with Muriel Anderson. So he's still active. God bless him. I
Yeah.
met him one time at one of the NAMM shows, the big trade show in LA. He was just walking by and he saw me playing, and I just smiled, and he came down and sat down and played a few tunes with me. He was actually very nice.
Oh, really?
He was a
Wow.
nice guy. Yeah. This is
That's
more than
amazing.
20 years ago. So I'm sure he wouldn't remember, but it was fun.
That's
I
awesome.
think he also went back to school and got his music therapy degree. I'm not sure if he's still practicing as a music therapist, but he did that for a while, or at least he got the degree in Arizona. He lived there for a while.
That's
I
an
guess he was
area
the
of music that I've never really explored that much, and I'm fascinated by it. I hear more and more
mm-hmm,
people start going to school for music therapy now, and I'm definitely
mm-hmm.
curious to see what kind of stuff comes out of that.
Well, there's some real benefits to it. I have a friend, I don't think she has a degree in this, although she does have a degree, taught at Berkeley for many years. My friend Cheryl Hodge, piano player, singer. And she's got something called the Dementia Choir Project, where she's gone around to various nursing homes and facilities and approached people with dementia, in some cases where she lives. And she's also done this on the road. And some folks who were really almost catatonic, they couldn't speak or walk. And she's got them maybe 3, 4, 5 months in after singing, really almost back to normal, where they can walk,
Mhm.
talk, and do everything else. So that, the singing, finding a song that you can even just begin with some little fragment of a lyric or some fragment of a melody that you remember from your youth, and slowly it pulls them back into awareness. And she's had some, not with everyone, but she's had some very dramatic results with some people, and she's done it now for years, and she loves doing it.
It's amazing playing music for senior citizens. I've found that some of the most meaningful gigs I've played have been at senior centers, because you start playing
Absolutely.
some of these old standards and you can just tell like it brings these people right back to their childhood, and
Absolutely.
they know all the
Absolutely.
words and just makes them so happy. And it's like one of those
Yeah,
experiences where you really feel like you're making a difference in somebody's life
I
playing
agree.
this music.
I've done some of it too, and I agree. And I'd like to do more of it too. And I think it is meaningful for them, even if they're not necessarily professional musicians or even amateur players. It conjures up all these beautiful memories of their youth, just hearing these
Mhm.
familiar tunes. And the songs are fun to play. So it's not a stretch
Yeah.
for us. We enjoy them.
Back when my
Speaking of
grandma was
playing,
alive, that's what I would do when I would learn a new
you play
tune.
tunes for
That's how
her.
I would
That's
practice it.
great.
I would play it for her. That's how I'd practice it. So,
That's great. That's great. I mean, I think, and I love playing those old tunes. I enjoy them. I think you do
mhm,
too. So lots
absolutely.
of interesting harmonic challenges in the older pieces. Speaking of playing, why don't we do at least a few more together? And
Yep.
any other questions or comments at the moment before we push on?
Um, I think that's it so far.
Okay, great. Well, again, we want to thank you guys for watching with us. We're going to play a little more for you. And we will do some more of these. I love playing with and interacting with Mike. And we're going to do some more classes together for Mike's master classes. And do check out our YouTube channel. Mike has his lick of the week and lots of other great content up there. And I'm posting a video a week on the TrueFire YouTube channel and my YouTube channel. So, get out there and not only look at us, but when you have time, just see what folks are doing and support us when you can. That's very much appreciated. Although you're very welcome to watch for free too. We're happy to play for you under any circumstances.
Absolutely. And we have
We thought we
John's
might also mention
YouTube channel. I was going to say, we have the link for
no, yeah.
John's channel in the description. And also, if you haven't yet, John just released a new album called Rain Painting. I listened last week. I was completely blown away.
Oh,
It's
thanks,
an
Mike.
album that he made with him and his friend Dan Dean. And it looked like you finished recording it when right before COVID started. right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's an unusual project. You can hear a little sample of it on the Origin website. I've got about 20 CDs in their catalog, great independent label from Seattle. And it's owned by two drummers, one of whom I play with, John Bishop, and Matt Jorgensen is the other drummer. So this project started, I'll give you the short version of this, but it normally, as you know, if you do a recording project, you hopefully rehearse a bit, and maybe it's a working band, you go into the studio for a day or two, and then the recording's done, and then you mix it, and hopefully it comes out a few months later. But in this case, Dan had been mastering some other projects I'd done for the label, so I knew about him, but we hadn't met. And so I had a question for him about one of the masterings. I had to redo something, so I asked him to take a second pass on the master because I had to deal with some amp noise on an overdub guitar. So that's how we actually met online. And he said, let me send you this new project that I did, which is his first project for Origin, called Songs Without Words, which you should also check out, Mike. And that's Dan singing movements of classical pieces with the overdub voices. And it sounds a little like Take Six or Jacob Collier, because he's not a classically trained singer, but beautiful pitch and intonation. And I loved it. So I thought, boy, my little songs are all chord melodies. I wonder how it would sound if he sang those parts, not having any idea if he would agree. I played you a little of it, I think, before the record came out. So I said, Dan, would you just give a listen to some of these? Do you have time? He said, sure, I'll listen. So I sent him the music. And then when I was under normal circumstances, I go up to Seattle pretty often. It's about 3 hours by car from here in Portland, where I live. So I went to his home studio, and he has a long history also as an engineer with his own studio, done tons of sessions, really knows his way well around the studio. So I just recorded my part solo on a nylon string and left him the music so he could see the voicings. And then he'd send me these works in progress as he'd go through the tunes and create arrangements. And I thought his voices really brought my melodies to life in a beautiful way that I didn't really know. And then we slowly added other layers of guitar comping. We did most of these with click tracks, although a few of the melodies are rubato. Then he added his bass. Then he added some bass solos. I added my guitar solos. And I said, hey, if you want to scat on a few of these tunes, because I didn't realize how good an improviser he is. And then he added some virtual drums and percussion from his sound library. So many of the tunes sound like a full band, although it's just the two of us. And this took us more than a year. He did most of the heavy lifting. It's hundreds of hours of his time in the studio. But if you just listen to it now, to me, it sounds pretty spontaneous and kind of in the moment, like just we're having a good time. And we didn't have a good time doing it. We're talking about doing another one. But it was really fun and pretty, not like any other project either one of us has done. And so far, people seem to like it. So thank you for mentioning it for me.
And where can people find it if they want to get it?
Yeah, you can get, if you just go to originarts.com, that's the label, and just you'll see it. It's in the February release. It's up just on the homepage. But just if you go to if you click on Origin Artists, you'll see a list of, they got about 300 artists. Go to guitars, you'll see me. Click on my name. It's got about 20 plus CDs on the Origin label, including that one. And there's a sound sample up there from one of the tunes. And I think that's also up on my timeline on my Facebook page. I think there's one tune up there as well, which I sent to you. So thanks for that. And anything you want to plug to the guys? Anything you have coming up in terms of projects or things that you want people to keep an eye open for?
Not really. Just keep doing the YouTube channel. I have a couple of new YouTube series ideas in the works that I'm keeping on the down low for now, but they will be out relatively soon.
Excellent. So. Well, again, do try to follow the people you like on YouTube and support them when you can, at the very least with a nice comment. And I'm sure we both typically go on our channels pretty often just to see if someone leaves a nice comment, and very often that can turn into a nice friendship or maybe some kind of a professional relationship. So as you and I both know, trying to stay engaged and interacting with the folks that are posting nice comments is useful for all of us. So
absolutely.
All right. So we talked about trading courses on a couple of tunes. And you had mentioned Gone with the Wind. That's one I like a lot. Played that a few times with Paul Myers and Gene Bertoncini when we did a few guitar trios. That was fun. So this is a nice old standard. Why don't we just, I think probably most folks know the melody. Let's just start with a bit of blowing. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Would you like to go first?
Sure.
Be my guest. Beautiful, Mike. I enjoyed that.
Likewise.
I look forward to the time when we can do that in the same room together. And that will happen later this year. I'm pretty sure.
I think this time it will. We said later this year, like 6 months ago, but I think this time it looks a lot more promising.
It does. I think we're headed in the right direction, thankfully. I'm talking to some friends. I had some other workshops this week with friends in Europe, and things are moving more slowly over there, unfortunately. They're just having a little more difficulty coordinating everything over there, but I hope they're moving in the right direction there too. I think they are in some places anyway. I dearly hope so. So we will learn some lessons from all this. But one of the silver linings to all this is the fact that some of these kinds of online collaborations, like our friendship, would not have developed perhaps if there hadn't been a pandemic. So, we're all repositioning, or we have for the last year. It's hard to believe it's been a year when we've had this as our musical reality. But I'm grateful for these friendships and relationships that we can carry forward into our musical lives as we get back to more normal lives.
Me too. Absolutely.
Indeed. Mm-hmm. I'd love to do another one of these sometime. I've got to hitch up the wagon here and do a little gig. Actually, I've got a gig down at the Oregon coast. A friend that's booking some restaurants, as I mentioned. But sure, it was a pleasure to play with you. And let's plan on doing another one, maybe in April sometime.
Sounds great. Do you have time for one quick question? We got one more question.
Of course, I do indeed.
So he was saying that he tends to be more comfortable with Latin bass lines as opposed to improvising over standards. How can he get better at improving his feel over standards as opposed to Latin?
Well, it's an interesting point. I mean, there's so many variations, and I'll let you answer this too, but there's so many variations on how to place the quarter note. So I think sometimes playing along with records to get an understanding of how you want to place the time, and they can also change based on who you're playing with. So someone like a Ray Brown, right in the middle of the quarter note, beautifully placed when he walks the bass line. Eddie Gomez, Dave Holland, John Patitucci on top, big time. Jack DeJohnette way on top of the beat. Elvin Jones almost falling off the stool backwards because he's so far behind the beat. But the point I'm making is all those approaches to time are valid and great. So I think you sort of discover what you like by listening and through trial and error. So you and I think, both tend to favor being a little on top of the time when I hear you play alone, and I do too. Even if it's slower tempos, I want to hear this notion of just a little bit of an edge to the time so it doesn't drag. If I had to choose between rushing a little and dragging a little, I would prefer to rush. We're not trying to be metronomes. If you actually play along with a click track for a recording, for example, it feels like the click is kind of holding you back. And in reality, you're just wanting to move ahead a little bit. That's just sort of the normal energy that we put into playing, I think. So in terms of understanding how to play your version of what feels like swinging, basically your version of the triplet with that middle eighth note taken away. So if it's ba ba da ba da ba do ba beep beep, I tend to be on the sort of the upper edge of the quarter note there, or the eighth note, just to make it feel like it's kind of moving ahead. And I didn't arrive at that conclusion immediately. It happened over time, the people that I listened to. But even going back to Charlie Parker, Cannonball Adderley, or Ben Webster for that matter, you're hearing people that are a little bit on top of the beat going back 100 years in the music. So it's not necessarily something that modern players came up with. So I would just suggest doing a lot of listening, and then maybe even if you don't know precisely what the people playing harmonically, playing along with a group, just to try to duplicate their quarter note feel and see what feels comfortable for you. Comments from you about how you might help them?
I think that's all spot on. The only thing I would add is, in terms of getting more and more comfortable hearing walking bass lines and knowing your place in the form, maybe just take a standard that you want to learn or a standard that you're working on and listen to a couple of different versions from some different people with different bass players, and just see if you can listen along, and then maybe just check and see if you could hear every time it gets back to the top of the form. And through doing that, you'll hear, like John was saying, there's a lot of different bass players have different styles and different ways of walking. And I think if you listen to a couple of different versions of some different tunes, it'll expose you to that. And you'll start to hear more and more like kind of patterns within the bass lines. And I think over a period of time, it'll just help you more and more kind of be aware of your place in the tune. And then,
I agree.
Beyond that, I would say also if you could take like a tune and be able to play a quarter note solo through the entire tune, that's something that Chris Morrison had me do a lot in college. That helped immensely.
Interesting. And also sometimes just playing a bass line. I mean, you could take it, if we're taking Gone with the Wind, you don't necessarily even have to restrict yourself to the bottom four strings, but just to sit there and go. That can help you actually as a soloist too. But again, that feel of, again, you could feel me maybe anticipating the eighth note a little bit. I have a little trick actually on the guitar that I do. And you do, I think, something similar, Mike, where I'll play a quick, maybe a 30-second note as an upstroke that's not actually, it's more a rhythmic device than a harmonic device. It's this. So.
Right.
I don't overdo it, but I do that probably if I'm playing a walking bass line. I might do that with chords as well. Etc. So again, it's a little on top. This being on top of the time or anticipating the eighth note a little bit is not a reflection of tempo. It's just a reflection of feel. It's a little on top. Again, not right or wrong, not better than playing right in the middle of the quarter or behind. It's just sort of my preference, and I think yours too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super, Mike. This really was fun. So why don't we stay in touch? You and I do a little class and guitar hang sooner rather than later. I'll just be in touch with you in a couple of weeks. And again, thanks for everyone for watching and for donating if you're inclined. Do check out Mike's YouTube channel and my channel, and Releases on Origin. We have classes together for Mike's master classes. I've got courses on TrueFire, DC Music, in addition to the Mike's master classes, lessons, some product out with Medley. So just please be aware of the people that you like and support them when you can. And we hope to see you all soon.
Sounds good. Thanks again, John. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure, Mike. Take care. We'll stay in touch.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for watching. Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody.
All right.